most people know about me here at UWSP is that I have a certain expertise and I teach these classes. And that expertise is really founded in longstanding interest and curiosity in business and psychology. I am a pointer, and when I was here back in the 80s, I studied psychology and business, ended up majoring in psychology, went on to get advanced degrees. And I've only been here a couple of years now. How exciting to come back here to my alma mater and teach and walk the same hallways that I walked as a confused and struggling young man back then. And most people don't know that I spent about a decade in mental health, working in outpatient clinics and in a hospital setting. I was the head of the spinal cord team at an inpatient rehabilitation hospital. We worked with spinal cord patients, people who were paralyzed, patients with brain injury, patients with terminal illness. And it was in those roles that I learned a tremendous amount about personal resilience and overcoming adversity. I've also been through a good bit myself, having dealt with a spinal cord injury, broke my neck in high school. I've dealt with chronic pain, been through divorce, something that many of us, unfortunately, are probably familiar with. And also open heart surgery just 3 years ago, where I was rushed to the Cleveland Clinic and had 12 hours of surgery, 12 days of intensive care, 30 days in the hospital, and a full year of cardiac rehabilitation. So I've been through a lot and I've seen a lot. And I also have spent, prior to that cardiac episode, a decade with an executive assessment and coaching firm in Pittsburgh. And we assessed executives from every continent and every major industry. And one of their biggest challenges was helping large numbers of people move in a productive direction when dealing with adversity. So this is a challenge that is very common, and I'm hoping to take us into a deeper dive here this morning and hopefully walk away with some insights and some tips. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm a member of a wonderful community here at UWSP. We have a health and wellness coaching certificate program, other graduate programs. These are all links you can click in your slide deck after you receive it. I'm an instructor on Jennifer Hess's team with the continuing education group, and I also teach in the MBA program. There's a link to that here as well. So let's just take a look at the big picture here for a moment. This new shared reality has unfolded: anxiety, fear, and uncertainty. And of course, these are all part of our human condition and the regular routine of life, in fact. But they've entered this collective narrative. This isn't my quote, this is Kit Krugman. There's this sense that we're carrying an extra load right now, in addition to what we were already dealing with. And it's my belief that we're all willing to be inconvenienced and even sacrifice a great deal to help other people. And I think that's with this crisis, that's what we all in many ways rush to do. But as that pain begins to increase, particularly the financial stressors that we deal with in terms of closing a business, being laid off or furloughed, and dealing with financial stress in our families, begins to hit home when we have to say no to our children, when we have to cancel plans. And as that pain increases, it's also in our human condition to say, when it really comes down to it, if it comes down to me or you, it's really going to be looking out for me. and that's completely normal as part of our survival instinct. So there's a lot of tension right now. Obviously, we all feel it in terms of what we're all dealing with. So let's sort of hit that head on. We know that the biggest challenge right now in our workforce is staff anxiety. And I'm speaking about the global picture here. Of course, you might have other significant stressors that are more immediate to you right now, but overall, staff anxiety is a big problem. Because what we know about anxiety is that it tends to wear on us. So let me just pause right here and ask the group and just chime in. what are some ways that we behave differently, or what are what's some behavior we see in others when they're experiencing chronic anxiety, unrelenting? What might you notice in yourself or other people? Let me
Brian,
ask. Yes,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
Todd.
Yeah, I would just say that sometimes in this kind of situation, fear drives our decision making instead of growth, and it's tough to get over that, and that helps. That sometimes then magnifies anxiety.
Absolutely. So it consumes us. We want relief, right? And when that fear and anxiety just won't let up, how does that feel in terms of the weight and the stress and how it might affect our behavior?
Well, I think sometimes it can be unrelenting unless you can figure out a way to keep a kind of a positive life stance to it all and focus on the things that are in your control.
Right, right. Big challenge. Thanks, Todd, for chiming in.
To add from the chat box, Sammy says impulsive behavior. N. Miller says short tempers, distracted easily. Sherry says irritability.
Right. Thank you for those
pretty similar.
Chiming in. All of those things and others. So some people, when they're stressed, they will be more sort of outgoing, more maybe gregarious, maybe more impulsive. They might have more energy. Some people, when stressed, will tend to withdraw, might become depressed. You might see less of them. And so we're all dealing with this differently. So this adds to the complexity of the picture here. And obviously, that complexity has an impact on your business culture. Let's take a deeper look here at the cycle of fear. This cycle of fear that is stimulating and yes, addictive and exhausting. So why is it stimulating? Why is it addictive? Because the brain gets addicted biochemically to stimulation when it's repeated. So let's just take a walk around this cycle of fear. So first, virus and economic news. I think we all know what that is. You don't need to look very far to see on a daily basis frightening information. And so when we see this information, we attach a cognitive label to it, which cognitive label is a psychological term for thoughts. We think something about this information, and we say, this is going to maybe kill me or hurt me. These are really significant thoughts in terms of our survival, right? I think what we've all wanted to know from the outset about this virus is how deadly is it, and how soon is it going to get here, and how is it going to affect us all in terms of the suffering? These are very significant thoughts in terms of their impact on our physiology. The next red circle here in the bottom right. So we know from the study of stress and on the body that we have a physiological reaction to it. It's the classic fight or flight response. So thoughts of I'm in danger trigger a physiological response that prepares the body to act. So in the short term, heightened concentration, a surge of energy, a release of hormones that position us to act. Unfortunately, the negative side of that, when it's sustained, is that it compromises then our cognitive functioning after a short burst. We have difficulty with problem solving, memory, concentration, creativity, some pretty important cognitive tasks in the workplace. We also compromise our immune system. The very thing we need to keep us strong to defend our body against the virus is being compromised when we're in that chronic fight or flight state. So in that state, then we search or we wait for relief. It's especially when it's new danger. How do I get out of this? Or if I wait it out, it'll pass. And the thoughts that go with those actions are, so somebody help me. This is the looking outward for relief. Where is somebody going to step up and help me to get out of this? And so where do we go? Right back to the news, looking for an update. And what do we find there? You guessed it. And this continues to churn. Resonate with anyone? Now, we'll come back to that loop and talk about an alternative to that cycle. So Todd brought up fear. So this idea of professionalism, how we behave at work, accountability, reliability, steadiness, smooth in relationships, our loyalty to our colleagues and our employer, integrity, doing the right thing, and in fact, doing whatever it takes. These are all qualities of what we call collectively in our Western culture professionalism. Sort of a coat we put on, right, when we want to step into that professional role, and we're familiar with all of that. So what fear does is it pressurizes all of that, because behaving in those ways, either consciously in a way that we concentrate, or at a subconscious level, and meaning that we've been trained to behave this way and we've been conditioned over time to behave this way, that all gets compromised, because on the inside we're dealing with some very real concerns, and it becomes difficult to behave in these ways consistently when we're churning on the inside. So I guess I want you to know that these conditions are present in your workforce. People are churning on the inside while they're trying to behave in these ways. I had my own sort of, I tend to endure stress. I tend to think positively on a daily basis, but even an expert like me gets worn out from time to time, and it would really hit me on Easter when nothing was the same as it has ever been on a holiday, and it was just very awkward. None of the traditional food, or people, and we're all sort of connecting on Zoom and sort of laughing about how sort of wonderful that is and how absurd it is all at the same time. And I just didn't enjoy it at all, outside of the obvious connections with family members. But I thought, when is this craziness going to end? And I was so grumpy for the whole next day, just kind of carrying that with me. And all of us are experiencing it in some way, where it sort of hits us. We sort of regain sort of some equilibrium and some control, and go back and push and push and push around this idea of managing this and being professional. Now, the trouble with this sort of pressure is that it gets back to that stress and anxiety thing, is that it can tend to wear us out. So there's got to be another way, and we'll talk more about that. So one of the characteristics of professionalism is to sort of not show too much emotion at work. And if you look vulnerable, or if you cry, or if you throw a temper tantrum, you tend to be viewed as somebody who's sort of not kind of keeping yourself together, right? Why do you think that is? Why is showing emotions at work, why has that been viewed historically to be not a positive thing? Let's hear from the group. Prefer you chime in, but you can chat if you're shy.
Brian, this is Craig Idema. It could be perceived as a sign of weakness.
All right.
Hey, this is Sam. I think it sometimes is misportrayed as lack of focus at work.
Yeah, very interesting. Weakness, lack of focus.
In the chat, Sherry has said it's unprofessional, it makes you seem illogical, or that you lack reasoning.
Wow. This is so true and so harsh. Doesn't that sound harsh? You're weak, you're unreasonable, you're irrational. What else?
I think this is Sam again. I think another thing that it's misportrayed as is if you're emotional at work, you might not be able to handle the job at task. Therefore, you're not doing the appropriate position for you.
Wow. I mean, it sounds so judgmental, doesn't it? But we know our emotions are such a common part of our human, an obvious component of our human condition. And we actually train people in emotional intelligence to expand your emotional expression, like be courageous and be willing to show more, take a risk. And we know that when people do that, actually the surveys say that employees actually appreciate that because you actually look like you're normal. And I can relax a little bit about my feelings, right? Why do we think this has been going on for so long? When did this start?
This is Kayla. I don't know if it started there, but in this conversation, think about some of those early manufacturer leaders who were very adamant that they I might have this quote wrong, so forgive me, but I think it was Ford, I can't think of his name right now, the manager of Ford, who said, why did they give me the heart when I only want the hands? I mean, he really just wanted machines. And I think maybe that is what sort of permeated this culture to feel like if you're at work, you have to be a robot.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Thank you, Kayla. I think that's very insightful, and I agree with you. The Industrial Revolution gave us this scalable manufacturing, and so the idea to get large numbers of people to do certain things, and there's a transaction culture, right? So you give me 40 hours of your week to do X, Y, and Z, and I'll give you money, and we'll agree that that's what we will do. And that's not sustainable in our modern culture, frankly. People want more than that. They want an enjoyable workplace. They want to feel like they belong emotionally. They want certain perks, and they want to be known. They want to be known for who I am. What are my unique talents? Maybe you hired me to do X, Y, and Z, but now there's an opportunity to do more. And how can I help if you don't know who I am? So the emotional agreement is much more dynamic today than it used to be. But the ripple effect of this tradition still reverberates, vibrates in our culture, and we can change. And it's my opinion that now's the time to do it, because people pretending to be professionals at this time is just not working for them. And ask and they'll tell you that. So, I don't wake up in the morning and say, gosh, I can't wait to have another Zoom meeting. But tomorrow I was excited to have another Zoom meeting. This is mass migration to communicating in this new way because of the virus. Created all sorts of opportunity, but it's thrown us into our homes, where for many of us, it has not been the place where I wore that professional jacket, right? So we say at work, I'm loyal to you, my employer. This is my priority. When we go home, we say to our families, of course you're my priority. And so there's this like dichotomy there where we're cheating on our family when we're at work, and we're cheating on our employer when we're putting our family first. This is a tension in our work culture, and this is sort of just throwing all of that mix at us. And there's tension there, and the resolution is to relax and be ourselves. And one of the beautiful things that's happening here is that you're in your homes right now, and but we're learning to sort of like relax a little bit about our expectations. It's really okay if your child is on your lap. not so concerned with casual nature, of your dress. Obviously, there's a certain amount of etiquette and in the way that we conduct ourselves and deal with technology that's important. But I think we're all relaxing a bit as we're working through these tensions. That's a good thing. So when I say the collapse of professionalism, I'm talking about the old way. We have an opportunity to have a new culture, okay? So I love this picture of our little friend here, and it's, I didn't realize till this morning when I was talking to my wife, Jay, about these slides. She said, he's got a Bible in his hands there. That's kind of cool. And I didn't see that. Let's take another deeper dive into our own personal psychology so we can see where there is opportunity and where there is risk and where we can make a change. So the small print here is a little light, but I ask you to kind of take zoom in there with your eyes. The left spiral here is called the upward spiral. These are sort of the positive feelings. From number one, joy, and empowerment, freedom, love, the best things we can feel. And the bottom there, contentment, sort of the most basic way that you can feel positive. And on the right side, the downward spiral, the sort of mildest form of negativity would be boredom, that you're just not engaged in a positive way. And the most intense is fear, and you see powerlessness and victimization. And you see that these are spirals and there's these arrows sort of like pushing it up on the left side and pushing it down on the right side. And what I want you to know about these two spirals is that they're both powerful and they both tend to pull up or push down. There's a force about them. On the right side, if you think about that cycle we looked at earlier, the cycle of fear, it sort of repeats itself. So negative energy sort of keeps negative energy building. And so you might think of it like bad news, negative thoughts, fear, panic, and so on, sort of going back, more negative news, more discussion, more talk of negativity. The more you talk about it, the more you feel it, the more you see, the more you see, the more you think, the more you feel. It's a spiral of negativity, and it can trap us. And it's very powerful. And when you look at this, you can almost feel it. You can feel when you're on the positive side, around positive people, thinking positive things. And you can feel the negative side. So the trick here, obviously, is to get out of the right side and into the left side. By the way, would it surprise you to know that 80% of people, according to research in positive psychology, basically live on the right side on a daily basis? What do you think about that?
There's a comment in the chat that I didn't have a chance to share earlier, but Sherry had said to the last conversation that war times, getting people to scary things in a terrifying setting. And I think that also applies to this downward spiral. I mean, that's how I think anger turns to hatred and rage, and that's how war amplifies. So even though that was a comment from earlier, it definitely applies here.
Yes, and thank you for the example. It's sort of illustrating the point, okay? That there are forces at play here that are affecting our thoughts and our moods, right? And let me come back to the question around, does it surprise you that 80% of people are sort of living on the right side much of the time? And why do you think that is?
Rebecca, good morning. I think about that, and I think that makes me disappointed. That brings me to that side of the spectrum when I'm going, wow, how do we find ourselves being there? Or how do 80% of people find themselves being on that downward spiral? So it's surprising and saddening to me.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Rebecca. Now imagine that 80% of your employees are sort of walking around with these types of thoughts and these types of feelings while they're trying to be professional for you. You starting to feel some more tension? And so where we're headed with this is, how do we invite people from the right into the left? Okay. What are some skills? What are some quick tips that help us to do that? But in order to do that, we have to first look at ourselves, and we have to say, how do I get myself from the right to the left? What are the conditions, circumstances, time of day, people I'm around, and so on, that tend to contribute to me feeling disappointed, doubtful, worrying, even fearful, and feeling powerless. By the way, it's jealousy is 20. I thought, wow, that seems pretty high. That's like there's only 2 beyond just absolute madness. So mindfulness is power. Mindfulness is simply the act of slowing down and thinking about your thinking, okay? So if you're going to interrupt this cycle of fear, you've got options. And you need to, we all need to think about where we can intervene. And the only way to do that in a conscious way, in a way that we concentrate and do it, is actually slow down and think about it. You know, I teach the health psychology class, and we have a lot of fun students exploring how it is that we are taught what to think, but not as much about how to think, about how to become more self-aware, and how to think about how our thoughts affect our psychological well-being and affect our behavior, affect our habit formation, etc. And one of the hardest things for them to sort of get their heads around is that this is something that actually requires some work, some effort, to pause and think and plan, maybe take some notes, maybe journal a little bit. What can I do differently to change my psychology, to change my and change my life? So I encourage all of us to pause and think. So these are my quick tips here on how to get out of the cycle of fear. They're connected with those red circles, but you might have your own. Limiting exposure to news, noticing that you're safe right now. So fear and anxiety is fear about what's coming potentially my way. So I'm thinking about the future, raising my physiology. So distinguishing between something that I'm fearful in the future, and am I looking around saying, am I actually in real and present danger right now? Being able to distinguish between those two is a great skill to have. I want you to notice right now that we're engaged in a dialogue and an experience together. And at this moment, we're connecting, we're listening, we're chatting, we're safe right now. And that's what I mean by being mindful and noticing in the moment the difference between real and present danger and fear and anxiety about the future. Gratitude is a simple way to change your thinking, which changes your physiology. Calming our bodies, there's 100 ways on a quick list to do that, and we all have our things that we do to relax ourselves. And you know, whether it's regular exercise, time with a friend, some calm meditation, some outdoor time. So no one activity works for all people, and no one activity works for the same person over time, because we evolve and we're exploring, we're always learning new ways to relax. Calming our body intentionally through something as simple as breathing, in fact, just slow your breathing down, changes your physiology. And that's a very healthy thing to do to improve your immune system and get out of that chronic fight or flight syndrome. Connecting with others is a way to live in the moment. So when our mind is thinking about the future, and when our mind is thinking about the past, anger, resentment, grief about things or people I've lost, that's creating a lot of noise in our mind. And when we live now and we connect consciously and intentionally with other people, what we're doing is we're putting those other things sort of on the side in our mind, and that's a very healthy thing to do. Living in the moment is the best place to live. It's the only really place you can actually live. And it's the best place to feel love and to feel connected and to be creative. So I encourage all of us to spend more time thinking about living in the moment and doing the next best thing. So when we feel overwhelmed and there's so much to do, what's the next best thing that we can do? And I also encourage this activity of thinking about these things morning, noon, and night every single day. And why is that? To create new habits. So what we're trying to do here is change the cycle, from a cycle of fear to a cycle of resilience, right? So what does a new model look like? I want to choose the news that I want to read, or I want to limit the news that I get. A quick look once a day, sift and sort through the some of it exaggerated, so it's nothing new. The media knows that the cycle of fear is addicting. This is something that savvy business marketing people know, that if you hold people in that cycle, they'll come back to look to see if there's relief. And when you provide new fear, it spins them back into that same cycle. So I'm not saying that much of the information is untrue. I'm just saying it's designed in a way to serve the media industry. So thoughts of I can protect myself. These are just examples, or I can help others. I'm empowered. And routine physiological recovery. So I am emotionally charged because there's a lot of change, a lot required of me, but I need to dedicate physiological recovery, dedicate myself to that on a daily basis. Look for opportunity in the midst of the chaos. Inspired action brings less suffering, feeling more in control and more empowered. And in that empowered state, I feel confident that I can sift and sort through the news that I want. So this is a new habit forming. It's interesting that when behavior is unhealthy, we call it addictive, and when it's healthy behavior, we call it habit forming. The brain doesn't distinguish; it's the same thing. But I would really love for all of us to get addicted to personal resilience.
Brian, there's a question in the chat from Caitlin. What would be an example of physiologic recovery?
So this is calming the body. So know that the state of affairs has us sort of physically charged. So we need to be self-aware and know that. And so an example of calming yourself might be between meetings to take 3 minutes and slow your breathing. Might be something simple as that. My colleague, Corey Huck, has designed an exercise routine that you can actually do at your workstation that can literally take 2 or 3 minutes. And 2 or 3 minutes in certain exercises can basically calm the body because you're asking something different of the body. When you do something physical, it's saying, oh, I thought I was just sitting here being tense, and now you're telling me to do an exercise. It's challenging the body to change what it's doing and to do something sort of, you all know the feeling of being physical where it's not stressing you out too much. It's just, it feels healthy. A brisk walk, a bike ride, a walk in the woods, a stretch. These are things that help us slow our body and calm our body. And doing that in some routine way sends a message to the body that, look, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to calm you down. It's important that these harmful hormones aren't sustained all day long because it'll compromise your health and well-being. We know that stress contributes to chronic disease and upsets our sleep and even slows our metabolism, all kinds of harmful things. So we've got to commit to slowing it down regularly, on a daily basis. Other questions or comments about changing this cycle for ourselves? So, you know, grit and mental toughness are part of that professionalism culture. You know, we might even have used these words with each other. That sends a message that, you know, we just got to hang in there and we just got to sort of tolerate it. And I think in our hearts, we know like there's got to be more than that because that's going to not feel good if it doesn't let up. And that's a fact. So what we need more of is centering, compassion, and community. Centering is what we've been talking about in terms of being mindful and calming ourselves and being real, authentic, not wearing a coat of professionalism and then being ourselves when we're not at work. It's just being real. Compassion is knowing that for many, the cycle of fear is real. Financial pressures are real. And let's be kind to each other. And let's build community. Let's work at bringing each other together to solve problems in ways that recognize our unique contributions. I've got some specific tips around these three here. But before we show you those, the decision to thrive is a moment. In working in the inpatient hospital, I'll tell you a story about Joe, and I am watching the time, but I need to tell you about this gentleman who was crying because he lost his big toe to amputation. He couldn't do the things he wanted to do anymore. He thought life was over as he knew it, and in his mind it was. And he came to a group full of amputees, and I had him sit next to a patient of mine that had been to the hospital many times. Went around the group, everyone told their story. Joe went first and he cried, and everybody said, you're gonna make it, Joe. You hang in there. Got around to the woman next to him, and she said, Joe, I lost my big toe. And he said, well, then you know how I feel. And she said, I do. And then they took my ankle, then up to my knee, up to my hip, and she had the blanket up, and she showed him that she didn't have a leg. And she said, Joe, when they got done over there, they came around the other side, and they came up all the way on the other side. She's in a wheelchair with no legs. In that moment, Joe was so inspired. He cried, and he came out of his crying spell, and he said, I'm going to create meaning in my life. I'm going to be proactive. If you can do it, I can do it. I see now what I need to do. So we all know this moment where I tell you this story because all of us have been through something in life that has pushed us to the limit. And I know this because it's just so common. Whatever that's been for you, a breakup, an injury, a death, disruption at work, illness. And at some point in that process, you say, I'm not going to do it this way anymore. I'm going to take control of my life, of my mind. So this is a moment. And so what we're doing is we're deciding that we're going in a new direction. And we're going to decide to help other people who are in a cycle of fear and surviving, frankly, into a culture of thriving, right? So how do we do that? We've got to say first to ourselves that we can either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behavior. We cannot not deal with this. If we don't reach out to people, we're just asking for more trouble. Delays in teaming, delays in proficiencies in terms of getting on this new course. So let's engage. Let's invite people. So how do we do that? I'm sure you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all got that in high school or basic psychology. Basically, when people are in a cycle of fear, they have real needs around their safety and security and their money around food and groceries and bills. It's a very stressful place. So we can say to them in that state, I care, how can we help? And I'm patient with you. But we can't stay there, because if we stay there, we're just feeding that cycle of fear. We're just sending a message that you need to be taken care of. I'm going to keep taking care of you. And that doesn't help people become personally resilient. It helps provide some relief, but it doesn't necessarily help people turn the corner. The way to win is to engage at the top. There's a link here to an article about more about how to do this. When you say to somebody, we need you, come, I'm starting here with love and belonging. Come to the table, let's work on this, we need you. We need you esteemed because you're talented, you know, you have a lot of knowledge about our company, you've seen a lot. And self-actualization really means becoming the best version of ourselves or aligning our activities with our talents. A lot of us have taken jobs that we took because we needed the job. And as we got involved, we said, I have these other talents, I have other things I can offer. I want you to see that. So this is a wonderful time to say, all right, look, we brought you in for certain things, but we're a team now trying to figure out how to move forward. So who's good at what? So I see this, I see you, Craig. I know that you're good at this and that. And wow, I'd love to know more about what you think is possible. And that's engaging people at the top. And when you do that, you're asking them to reach up. You know, you're taking a hand down to the lower part of that hierarchy and you're saying, yes, I see your suffering. Yes, I care. And I want to bring you up. I want to bring you up to this other area, because when we start to do this, people begin to feel empowered, and that energy helps them find creative ways to find the resources they need around their physiology and their safety. Okay. Kit Krugman has this wonderful quote that says, the glimmer of hope I'm clinging to, I'll just speed it up here, is that this is all going to liberate us from the post-industrial hangover of humans as resources, as pieces of the organizational machine without families or feelings. Let's connect with each other, lower the stress through those connections, because those connections are powerful. Not to get too spiritual this early in the morning, but you know, this sense of light being a positive energy and darkness, and like, you know, let's be lights and let's attract people to the light and the possibilities and all of that, I think is a really nice message around being centered, connecting, and building community. So here's some quick tips to lead others. Connect personally, listen, ask open-ended questions. You want people to sort of be comfortable. I don't want to be interviewed. I want you to ask me what I think or what I've been thinking about. So, Brian, what have you been thinking about in terms of what's possible? Yeah, let me feel comfortable kind of just sharing, because I'm sitting at home or wondering, yeah, what else can we do? Take notes when you listen to people. This is the time to gather business intelligence. What are people thinking about what's possible, about what's going on in our organization, about how we can do things differently? Identify those trends, re-examine priorities, be inclusive then in the action planning, and to the extent time allows, in the analysis around trends and priorities. What a beautiful time to teach people business acumen, to say, look, the market's changing, our organization's changing in terms of what we can afford to do it the old way. We've got to find new ways to do it. We've got to look at other possibilities. What have you been thinking? When we invite people in those conversations, we're teaching them to take business information, analyze it, re-examine priorities, and then build action plans. When you involve people to the extent time allows in those processes, they feel like they're helping you reimagine the business. And that's going to build loyalty because you're showing you care about them as human being, keeping them involved, and you care about their talents and cultivating them. Wonderful, wonderful things to do. Recognize others' value today. Back to living in the moment, okay? Rebecca, thank you for what you did this morning. That was powerful. That helped us do this and helped us do that. That's great. That helps Rebecca see her value today in the moment, and she's going, wow, something alive that's good that's happening right now that's different than all the other negative things I'm experiencing. And if you practice some of those tips, and of course you'll think of your own that work for you, you can do anything. You can tackle any of these bullets here, and endless other bullets that you have in your business and organization. And that's exciting. So I'm going to stop the slide here. I'm going to end this show, and I'm going to stop the share because I'm curious about your insights and in terms of looking at ourselves, your insights in terms of reaching out to other people, and what this can mean for all of us as a community of business professionals if we can invite people into a model of resilience. So sharing insights with each other, not for me, is another way to learn. And so let's take a moment now to share our insights with each other. No questions.
Brian, I'll jump in here. So I work at Skyward, and one of the things that we do every month is a learning journey meeting, and it's pre-standing before any of this happened. It actually was focused around emotional intelligence and EQ. And so I had the pleasure of sitting in on a webinar similar to this with you not long ago with the UWSP Leadership Certificate. And a lot of the content that you had shared there was stuff, you know, some of it translated to what you shared today, but I took some of that messaging and brought it into that learning journey meeting. And when we talk about gratitude and how everybody gets so caught in just their own selves and maybe not thinking about other people and or thinking about what's not going well and not focusing on something good. Well, during that learning journey meeting, we opened up the chat and I just said, 2 minutes. For 2 minutes, all I want you to do is in that chat, type what you're grateful for, no matter what it is. And I stopped and literally set the timer for 2 minutes. And it was the most amazing thing to watch that. And it was through Teams, through Microsoft Teams. So, you know, it was just, the chat just kept running and it was like amazing. And it was stuff from, you know, grateful the kids are sleeping, grateful, you know, for wine, grateful for the company I work for. It didn't matter, but it was just so awesome to see that. And then we had it recorded, and so anybody who couldn't go, you know, went and looked again. But, you know, I mean, it was just 2 minutes in a standing meeting to say, right now, before we go any further, tell me what you're grateful for. And I think it really shifted people's thinking for the rest of that meeting to be able to open up and have a positive kind of view and maybe get more out of it because their head wasn't thinking about everything that was going wrong.
Wonderful.
Then we did.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that example. We call it vitamin G in our line of work because it's actually been proven to change your mood and increase your cognitive functioning and all of those things. Proven to do it. So why are we doing more of it? Because it's not part of our work culture. So Rebecca, the challenge for all of us is to be inspired by your example and say, how do we weave this in a way that fits for people, right? So when we do new things at work that we think are powerful, what tends to happen is, think of an EKG or, you know, that shows kind of a heart rate, sort of an elevation, then it goes back down, then elevation again goes back down. And so what we want to do is we want to have sort of a lot of little beeps. We're going to find ways to work positive energy, any of the gratitude basically changes your energy. So that's why it doesn't matter what you're grateful for. It's the feeling, it's a reduction of tension and the building of energy that is the important thing, right? So we can cleverly work invitations for positivity into our work routine on a daily basis and watch how that energy affects other people. Thanks for that inspiration, Rebecca.
Hey Brian, it's Sam. One thing that I have, so I do the same type of background and talking about health coaching and sports psychology. And one of the little tools, I guess you could say, that I use with some of my clients or in some of my breakout sessions is I talk about building your joy toolbox. So you have all these tools, and just like when you're building a home or something, you're not going to use, you're hammered to do every single thing. You have a different tool for a different situation and different need. And that's what the joy toolbox is. And I have 6 things I always kind of put in my toolbox. The first one is control the controllables. So there's things in our life we just don't have control over. So I think it's putting our energy into what do you have control over? So acknowledging that, what can you control in the situation and what's out of your control in the situation. The second thing is, like you said, multiple times, is finding the opportunity. So now we have defined the things we can control. Within the things that we can control, where's the opportunity for you? So you start defining what your opportunity is. And then number 3 is, what is your purpose? So what are your KSAs? What's your knowledge, skills, and abilities? So now when you're finding the opportunity, you're basing it on your purpose, your vision, your goals, your vision board, what have you.
Yeah.
And then it's gratitude. So, showing the gratitude and showing the gratefulness that you can do that. So it's kind of having trust in the process, trust in yourself, trust in what you can do and you can achieve. And then comes rest and recovery. And you talked about that, and that's engaging the parasympathetic nervous system. That's letting yourself recover, get rid of the cortisol, let the good hormones come in. And that rest and recovery, like you said, that's either the short 3-minute break, or on a larger scale, get sleep at night. It can be just getting good rest throughout the night, that good 8 hours of sleep. So all that falls in the rest and recovery, but also kind of from a sports standpoint or athletic standpoint too, it's, you don't need to work out every single day of the week for 3 hours. You don't need to work out for 1 hour every single day of the week. It's actually taking time to rest and recover and let your body go through the process of change. And then the last thing, all of that is just as successful as your social environment. So where is your social support? What are you surrounding yourself with, and what are you putting into your bucket to support you through everything? And kind of think about where are you exposing yourself to? Is it what is your digital exposure? What is your in-person physical exposure? So kind of thinking about what is your social support in all aspects of being social.
Yeah. Sammy, thank you for sharing that. And what I want to say, and I love those tips and the idea of a toolbox. What I want to say to the group about what Sammy just demonstrated is that what Sammy has done is she's found some tools and some language that works for her, that's authentic, that resonates. All of this is the same in one sense, but in order for it to be powerful, it needs to come from you. And the words that work for you come from your experience, your adult experience of going through life and overcoming challenges. And so the trick here is to be authentic, to grab tools and tips and language that resonates with you and allows you to communicate effectively to others, and then to work it in on a routine basis to lead others effectively. And what you'll see, I'll just close on this point. What I believe you'll see in terms of tangible outcome is a noticeable increase in energy in your organization. So this is something you have to cross your fingers about. You'll actually see people come alive, because in our human condition, we're looking for invitations to connect and be a part of a community. So I'll close on that. If there are no more questions or any final chats. And I just want to say that I'm grateful for the invitation today. And if I can support you in any way, please reach out to me. My contact information will be in the slide deck, and Karen has it as well.
Brian, thank you so much. Thank you for your honesty and for sharing all these key concepts with all of us this morning. Now we need to keep up with that upward spiral and live the moment and be positive.
Yeah, thank you. Go have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
You bet. I'll just hit my button to leave the meeting and let you all carry on with your wonderful work.
Thank you, Brian. Have a great day.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
So much, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you. All right, so Karen, I thought I would just stay to
Thank you.
walk you through the last couple of
Hi, Tom.
steps here. Hi, Tom. You had the same idea.
I just wanted just to say thanks for bringing this today. I thought it was excellent, and it was just wonderful content and just affirmation of what PCBC is about and bringing that wonderful community and value to our community. So way to go, Karen. Kayla, way to have her back with the chats. That was so
I know.
Oh,
That's what I
thanks.
told her, Tom. I'm like, I had no idea the etiquette and that you're supposed to be reading them.
I had practiced as Brian did our LPC presentation, but in that presentation, everyone had their video on and we really didn't have anything going in the chat, but he had said in that at that day that he didn't like to monitor chat. So I knew someone would have to do it.
great job, guys. See you later. Have a great day.
Bye, Tom.
Bye, Tom.
All right, so Karen, when you end this meeting, you should have a button, I think, in the top right of your screen that says like end meeting for all participants or something. When you click that, it's going to say, I think it pops it up and it'll say like, here's your recording, save it to your computer. Just go ahead and save it to your desktop. And then we can upload it to